Look, I can't but think that now might be a good time for a little fire and ice. Please
Do not know. It's never a good time for fire and ice.
What happens when you mix fire and ice?
Warm water, baby.
It's bubbling, baby. Warm water. Warm water.
It is a Saturday afternoon over here at Union Draft House, and that means it is time for a little fire and ice. Mike Tipton coming live at you. I was about to introduce Brandon the Iceman Cone, but he is not here at the moment. That's just how much of a robot I am that I was going to reintroduce a man that is not sitting next to my side right now. However, I am blessed to have David Halpern hanging out with us as well, always getting us set up, making sure we look good, sound good, all that good stuff. I've got my dude, Andrew J. Polk, hanging out here as well. He's got a different camera angle. I'm going to bring that one into the stage right now. Look at that. Look how pretty we look. That wide camera angle, everything looking nice and pretty. I absolutely love it. I will get back to that here in just a little bit. A little bit later on in the show, we're going to have Mike Golic Jr. from DraftKings Network joining us here virtually as well. We're going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys and why I should have faith in the team that I love that also lets me down all the time. And we're going to talk about how we fix college football. He has some ideas. I've got some ideas. And we're going to fix bowl season. And I think maybe, just maybe, I can bring him over to the dark side to believe the things that I have to say as well. Obviously, we're over here at Union Draft House, 730 Sunland Park Drive. They've got some new specials heading into the new year as well. They've got a wing special. You buy the first pound of wings for $15.99. Then you get unlimited rounds after that until you're full. If you're a big fat guy like me, it's the best deal of all time. Daver, I think that's what we're going to have today is just ourselves a whole bunch of wings to get started on this Saturday. What do you think?
That sounds impressive.
It sounds impressive. Wow, I like that.
Yeah.
Anytime I can impress Dave, I'm a happy guy. Also, it is the $4 cider day. They got ciders, seltzers, and Ornitos, all that $4 as you come on out here to Union Draft House each and every Saturday. They've got all the screens on right now. We got Villanova basketball going on. There's some guy with an afro talking about horse racing, and it looks like it's raining in the middle of a horse race, which does not seem safe. I would not want to be on that horse. I would not want to be that horse. If I was doing that, I probably should not have looked that way. I feel like that's a PETA violation waiting to happen.
Wilbur.
Was that Mr. Ed?
An attempt at it.
Oh, okay. An attempt at Mr. Ed. I like it. Hey, anytime I get an attempt at Mr. Ed, I'm a happy guy. Okay, so some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about today is one of the questions that I've been getting a lot of. And obviously, me being a Dallas Cowboys fan, obviously the annoying Dallas Cowboys fan that I'm being right now with all the Cowboys gear that I'm wearing, was what happened at the end of that game, right? For those that have been living under a rock, if you don't remember, last Saturday, as a matter of fact, the Dallas Cowboys played against the Detroit Lions, came down to a last-second drive for the Detroit Lions. They go down the field. They score a touchdown. Dan Campbell wants to look at everybody and say, you don't have bigger testicles than I do. And he starts going for two with 26 seconds left in the game. They get the 2-point conversion. It gets called back for illegal touching. And everyone says it shouldn't have been illegal touching because 68 reported to the referee. Well, if you go back and you look at that whole game, 5 different times throughout the game, number 70 checked in as an eligible receiver off the bench. Might be a reason why I'm wearing this, right? So number 70 checks in as an eligible receiver off the bench. And what he goes ahead and does in that last play is runs towards the referee. The referee, once again, in a jam-packed game, you have to remember these are human beings that are watching this game, trying to get everything underway in the game, is staring at 70 as 70 is running in off the bench and hears report, report, report. 68 yelling report. Along with 68, Penei Sewell was hanging out over there as well. So you had 3 offensive linemen surrounding a referee, all in an attempt to try to report as an eligible receiver. Normally, you can only have 1 offensive lineman report as an eligible receiver. That is ultimately what causes all the issues, right? So you have a guy that reported 5 different times, coming in for the 6th time, looking at the referee, running towards the referee. Now, if he wasn't going to be the person to report, he should have just ran directly to the offensive line, because there's no such thing as deception in this case. The referee goes and tells the defensive team what number reported. And even if you listen to the Spanish broadcast, you can hear the referee say, number 70 reported as eligible, with 26 seconds left on the play clock. Which means if it was really that big of an issue, all the coaches on Detroit should have heard it. All the players on Detroit should have heard it, gone back to the referee with enough time to say, no, it's number 68. The referee would have said 68, reporting as an eligible receiver. And it all would have been in Detroit's favor. Now, the Cowboys would have covered 68, so to say whether or not he would have caught the two-point conversion or not is a moot point. We don't know what would have happened. All we know is that there was some confusion that happened because Detroit was trying to get cute with some stuff. In my opinion, they deserve to lose that game. If you're going to try to play those little shenanigans where you're going to try to confuse everybody, including the referee, who has since been demoted and will not be calling any playoff games because he's had a bad season, which is another thing we can talk about later on, is just how bad of a season this referee is at. But if you're going to try to do those little things, you deserve to lose. On top of that, you had 2 more chances after the penalty. You could have kicked the extra point to go into overtime. You chose not to. You got a penalty on Dallas. You moved the ball forward to the 2-yard line once again. You were gifted another opportunity to kick a game-tying field goal on the extra point, and you chose not to. And then all the pressure happens. You wind up, missing the 2-point conversion, and the rest is history. 3 different opportunities for Detroit to tie the game, take it into overtime, and see what happens then, because they had a lot of momentum working their way. But to say that if they had even gotten the 2-point conversion with 26 seconds left on the actual clock itself, that Dallas wouldn't have gone down and scored a field goal when Dak Prescott threw for 380 yards. CeeDee Lamb had 230 yards himself, and Dallas had 2 timeouts remaining. Those are the things like the what ifs and stuff like that I've been hearing a lot of. I know that I sound like a Dallas Cowboys apologist, and Dave, I would like to get your opinion on this because I feel like you're just leering at me right now. Like, look at this guy just talking about the Dallas Cowboys here because everyone's annoyed with the Dallas Cowboys and the fans, right? But it really feels like if we're going to be reaching for straws, that this is what cost the Lions the game. The fact that they had 2 opportunities to just kick an extra point that would have sent it to overtime really kind of makes one think about, okay, maybe it wasn't as dire of a circumstance as what people are making it seem.
Well, here's an even bigger question with Dallas playing the Washington Commanders tomorrow. My big question, and it sounds existential, is what does that game all mean in the grand scheme of life?
Dave Halperin asking life's biggest questions. We are currently joined by Brandon the Iceman Cohn. In a couple of minutes, we will also be joined by one Mike Golic Jr. to help talk about and maybe talk us down from the edge here of everything that's going on with the Dallas Cowboys. Brandon, I see the smile on your face. Dave are asking, what does this final game mean? Dallas needs to win this game. Let's make no mistakes about it. Dallas needs to win this game against Washington. I fully expect Dallas to just go out there and slap the commies around a little bit. I also expect Dallas to shit the bed because it's what the Dallas Cowboys do. What do you think, Brandon?
Well, we know how they play, especially on the road. We know how they play in the most significant and important and meaningful games of the season. And this, oh, by the way, happens to be the biggest game they've played during the regular season in quite some time because everything is on the line. The number 2 seed potentially playing a couple home playoff games, and that's where they have not been able to win is on the road. With all that being said, even though they got lucky, and sometimes it's better to be lucky than good against Detroit, they still got the W against another quality opponent, and they needed that win, especially against back-to-back losses that they took, which were not good. Let's call a spade a spade. And when it's all said and done, I'm going to choose the Dallas Cowboys to be victorious because they know what's on the line here. And if they ever want to make the Super Bowl again, if they ever want to make the NFC title game again, the road starts through Dallas. And they got a gift from the Eagles last week. The stars align. You and I never thought this was going to be possible. I was at O'Hare Airport when you texted me and you said you cannot believe that the Cowboys shit the bed against Arizona. And Philadelphia, against Arizona. And I couldn't believe it. I'm flying all day and I didn't know what was going on, but I think they're going to take care of business. I mean, fingers crossed, obviously, knowing them.
I had to look back at it, to help validate my opinion from earlier in the year. Week 6, Brandon, whenever Philadelphia was 5-1, I was the only person out here saying they look like a very vulnerable 5-1 team. They look super overrated. They're squeaking out these victories. Then we go back, fast forward, where they're 10-1. And I'm still saying this, like, I know I sound like an idiot, but given the last month and a week, 5 weeks, 6 weeks that we've seen from the Philadelphia Eagles, is it safe to say that this team is not safe? Like, I really feel like if everything holds up the way it holds up right now, they go into Tampa Bay on the road. The Philadelphia Eagles go on the road to Tampa Bay. They could legitimately lose this game.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles have picked the worst time of the year to go cold. You choose the beginning of the year to start on a cold streak. You don't choose December in January to be as cold as they are. And you did allude to it many times. And I told you were full of crap as usual, that they were eking out wins. And I said, well, they're just that good. And you were like, I don't know about that. Not so fast. And I'll give it to you. You know, even a broken old clock is still right twice a day. You called it. You were right. Even though I'm in Chicago, I'm still going to break your stones. You know the way it goes. But yeah, I mean, they're just not playing well. They're not looking sharp. Their defense isn't playing as well. Hurts isn't playing as well. They could definitely be one and done this year. And Tampa Bay is playing better football, especially as of late. And that's not going to be an easy game if Philly plays there in round one.
I've been posting up on Instagram a couple of reels about the possible playoff scenarios that are out there. There are so many playoff scenarios. As a matter of fact, if I count right now, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games out of the 16 that are going to be played. 11 games out of those 16 that all have playoff implications for what could happen, for playoff seeding, for all types of things. The Buffalo Bills can go from being the second best team in the AFC to being completely out of the playoffs with what happens during this weekend. Who you got back there with you, Brandon? I see someone over your shoulder.
No, just say hi, Uncle Joe.
Hi.
This is Mike. Just the tip that our buddy here, Dave, back home in El Paso. He's my buddy. I stay with him in Chicago. He's known me since I was a little whippersnapper, and he wanted to come on Fire and Ice today.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so what do you think about the Chicago Bears? Tell us a little bit about the Chicago Bears.
They can do better.
Yeah, you could say that again. They could always do better. Hey, look, bear down, right? And hey, Uncle Joe, tell Mike how much you love the snow. We got an inch of snow. You can keep it, right, buddy?
Yes.
Yeah, but he, Uncle Joe, we go to Brewers games, we go to Bears games, we go to all of them, right, buddy?
Yes.
Big sports fan here. He loves, and when I'm here, the poor guy has to watch nonstop sports.
I don't feel like it's too much of a punishment if he's got to watch nonstop sports.
No.
Yeah, we love you, Uncle Joe. I'm glad you say hi to everybody back home in El Paso. All right, that's my pal, Uncle Joe. Thanks, Uncle Joe. Love you, pal.
All right, so I wanted to talk about those games, Brandon. We got 11 games that have playoff implications on them out of the 16 games that are being played during this weekend. The ones that intrigue me the most, like I said, we talked about Buffalo. They can be anywhere between the number 2 seed to being out of the playoffs. What do you think the chances of the Buffalo Bills are to make the playoffs, to actually win the number 2 seed? Or do you think that they're going to be completely out of the playoffs? Because earlier this year you said they were an overrated team. They weren't going to make the playoffs. So are you sitting on the fence with your validation from earlier this year?
Again, it's all about timing and what have you done for me lately? And the Buffalo Bills have looked very good the last month. And again, the teams that go on to win the Super Bowl ultimately are also the teams that are healthy and get hot at the right time. And they are seemingly, looking good in both particular scenarios. So I think that the Buffalo Bills are as good as any team in the NFL right now. I think they're a legitimate threat to Baltimore, to anyone else in the AFC. And don't, of course, sleep on the Cleveland Browns. You still can't take anything away from KC until the champs are beat. But I look at this point as Buffalo is as good as anybody in the league. And I look at them as a real threat to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, because they're on a streak right now where it doesn't matter if they're home, road, anywhere. They're looking great. Admittedly, they really are.
Josh Allen making a real push for that MVP as an MVP candidate. Him and Lamar Jackson seem to be the front runners right now for the MVP. Whenever you look at the Miami Dolphins, do you see any weaknesses with them? Because in order to get that number 2 seed, to make sure, some games have to go through Buffalo, which is an amazing home field advantage. They have to beat the Miami Dolphins. Miami looks like they got injured at the wrong time. They lost Jalen Phillips a couple of weeks ago. They lost Bradley Chubb last week. We've seen Tyreek Hill kind of been hit or miss the last couple of weeks due to that ankle injury. I don't even know if they've got Waddle back yet or not, but this is a team that's dealing with a ton of injuries. How do you feel about the Miami Dolphins at this moment?
I really think that the Dolphins have a lot of talent, but I don't see them as being a team that's going to make a deep run. And I just say that because particularly inexperienced from Tua in the postseason. And I feel that in the most significant games, the games that have been more meaningful than not, they've seemed to have lost those games this year. And sure, they beat the Cowboys, whatever. Dallas's defense collapsed and crumbled like a clay statue. And they've gotten some big games, but in the end, I'm going to tell you that I do feel that the Dolphins could be one and done in the playoffs as well. And I don't see them being as good as Buffalo, as KC, as really Baltimore, or I'd say them being as like the 5th best team in the AFC right now. But if you would have asked me maybe in October, I would have said they're the number 1 team. But again, time does a lot for these teams.
Again, it is Fire and Ice. We are split up right now. Brandon over in Chicago. I am over here at Union Draft House at 730 Sunland Park Drive, taking apart. I'm on beer number 40, Brandon, out of the 100 for the 100 beer challenge. And I am happy to bring on right now our guest from the DraftKings Network, the one and only Mike Golic Jr. Gojo, you can check him out on Gojo and Golic Mondays through Friday on the DraftKings networks. And he's had an eventful week this week, Brandon. I don't know if you were listening to anything, but he had he was talking about his dad being a zaddy, being a little bit jealous of that on Pablo Torre on Monday. Earlier this week, he was 6-9ing with our friend Jason Fitz, and then yesterday he was showing off his feet on on a show with Jessica Smetana as well. Gojo, thank you for joining us. I hope you're not showing us the feet today.
No. We got the dogs firmly in the house at this point, so we're good on that front. None of the freaky stuff, just all straight, uncut sports for you guys.
There we go. That's the way that we like it. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about this, Gojo. You're one of the more level-headed people that I've met. You see that I'm wearing the Zach Martin jersey, your former teammate over at Notre Dame. Talk me off the ledge from thinking that the Dallas Cowboys are going to absolutely shit the bed.
I would like to be able to do that for you. And you know what? I think looking at this year's NFC playoff picture, you can at least make the argument that they're in the dance. Like, there are obvious flaws there that have still popped up. The run defense has been an issue for the last couple years, and in big games has shown up once again as a bit of a hamstring for them. But in general, when you look at the NFC playoff picture, like, all right, Dallas and the Detroit Lions seem to be right in a level playing field there. We know how that game ended controversially. The Philadelphia Eagles, unfortunately, I just don't think have the defense to compete at the level that we're used to in the postseason. Part of that is injury. Part of that's how they addressed especially linebacker and nickel coming into this last offseason. And then the Green Bay Packers, who are also in the mix. Some of the other ones there outside of San Francisco, who's clearly dad in the NFC right now. And then I think the Los Angeles Rams, who are a very scary team this postseason because of how they've come together once Kyron Williams and Matthew Stafford got back. Dallas can compete with almost any of those, maybe sans the 49ers, because we've seen that matchup has been troubling specifically for them. So I would say you don't need to be near the ledge, but compared to what the standard for this season was, which is going in, hey, this is a Super Bowl roster. This needs to be the standard for this year. I don't know if it's quite at that point yet.
Gojo, this is a scenario for the Cowboys. We know how they've goofed tremendously in the postseason the last numerous years, whether they've hosted the divisional round, been on the road, but they know that this game is just huge because they win, they get that number 2 seed, they get to be at home. They're 8-0 at home for the first time since like the 80s, I think. This is a team that I don't know. I mean, I want to be optimistic, but I feel that if they can get that number 2 seed, they could make some noise because San Francisco, they've shown to be really good, but they've also shown some vulnerabilities recently.
Yeah, I think we've seen now in the expanded playoffs that 1 seed in the first round bye is huge, given that attrition is often the biggest factor in this. But yeah, this is massive for Dallas to be able to lock up the 2 seed. And I'm not the biggest home road split fan in the world, just because usually I think it's a product more of the quality of teams you're playing. And you look who Dallas has played on the road, it's been some of the best teams in the NFL. So, of course, that split's going to skew in favor of that. But they're definitely a team that appears to need the indoor track as a definite helper. I was stunned in that Detroit matchup how much that Detroit front was able to stymie the Dallas run game more often than not. So I do think that would be big. And listen, it's right for the picking. Washington at this point is a team that looks like they are getting ready to potentially clean house there with Ron Rivera and company. Shouldn't be a ton of motivation. This is a game that Dallas has to go out and handle business, I think, as much mentally as anything else. There's been such an up and down, ebb and flow to this season in terms of the vibes around this team. And I think to see the ball go through the basket pretty resoundingly before this would be huge.
So let's talk about some of the matchups that we have going on here in the NFL as we're basically in playoff time before the playoffs start, and then we get the college football national championship on Monday. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up as well. But out of all these matchups, because there's 11 games that have playoff implications out of the 16 games that are being played this weekend, which one of those kind of stand out to you?
I mean, I think Buffalo and Miami is the nightcap is the most interesting one because, by that point, depending on what happens with Jacksonville and Pittsburgh, it could be the, hey, winning you're the 2 seed, losing you're out scenario for Buffalo that we've all talked about because that's a team that's record was never really indicative of how good the team is and how deadly they are. So I think that one, can Miami overcome all of the injuries that have started to, and we know along the offensive line had been there for the season, but now Bradley Chubb out along with Jalen Phillips. You had Xavier Howard injured in the last game a little bit. Even Tua was dealing with a shoulder by the end of that game, albeit, they pulled him largely because of the game flow there. That was out of reach, but can the Miami Dolphins muster one more big punch from that offense that's been extremely resilient in the face of injury to all those players, to Tyreek Hill at different junctures of the season? I have my doubts. I think Buffalo wins this game, and I think they get to punch their ticket to the postseason and make things really interesting because outside of, we talked about the NFC, outside of the Ravens in the AFC, there are no sure bets.
Is there one team this year in the NFC or AFC that you could just see being that team that nobody's expecting to make the Super Bowl, Gojo?
I mean, I think it could be the Browns at this point if you're looking for a real off-the-radar pick based on how Joe Flacco has played and really the defense that's maintained an otherworldly standard. The worst thing that happened to the Cleveland defense is that Baltimore's defense existed this year, because if they didn't, we'd have spent a lot more time talking about Myles Garrett and JOK and Ward and all the great pieces that Jim Schwartz has put to work over on that Death Star that's absorbed multiple quarterbacks, that's absorbed offensive line injury, Nick Chubb injured early in the season. Like, what Cleveland has gone through to get to this point is incredibly impressive. They occupy, I think, the AFC space that the Rams occupy in the NFC, but the difference is they're doing it on quarterback number 4, and the Rams are doing it with Matthew Stafford, who's recently hauled the Lombardi up. So it's incredibly impressive. I absolutely could see, given the makeup of the AFC right now, that team get hot because of that defense. And if Joe Flacco can keep playing unconscious like this, you got a shot.
Is Joe Flacco finally proving that he's elite?
I think it's like that meme of the 2 astronauts looking at Earth, pointing the gun at it, like he's always been elite. And you know what? He's playing with the freedom of a guy who knows he doesn't need this. Like, Joe was retired. Joe was sitting at home watching on the couch as a 38-year-old. Joe hit a lick on that contract back in 2012. Like, he's good. He doesn't need the money to do this. But he got the opportunity, and he's played with sort of that reckless abandon, going all the way back to that game against the Rams, where we first kind of saw him out there, where you're looking around back at that game and going, Joe Flacco kind of made some throws. There was some arm angle stuff in there. There was a little bit of sauce on that I wasn't expecting. So, Joe Flacco, confirmed elite.
Was there ever a point watching Joe Flacco come back where you think to yourself, you know what, maybe I can give it a shot? I know you slimmed down a little bit. You're like, you can be, a linebacker, a fullbacker. Yeah, I mean, there's something you can do.
I'm so soft now, it's unreal. I was having a conversation with someone at breakfast today. I have that recurring dream where I'm back at Notre Dame and I'm like late for practice or don't have my pads. And I'm the same size I am now and age I am now. And I'm looking around going, guys, recruiting's got to get better. If you're trying to play me right now, we've got real issues.
Speaking of Notre Dame, they were down here and they were victorious in the Sun Bowl again, 2-0 in the big game. You were here in 2010. It was miraculous that they came back this year. Your thoughts on them being back here in the Sun City, and do you ever see it potentially happening again with the playoffs expanding next year?
I do not mean this to disparage the Sun Bowl, but I hope not, because with an expanded playoff, Notre Dame, the standard should be, you should be making that every year. Right. Because of the way that this program's situated right now, what Marcus Freeman took over coming off Brian Kelly's years there, that should be a playoff team every year in the expanded playoff. But it was cool to see him back down there. Like I've always told people, the Sun Bowl committee does a great job. Everyone in El Paso is extremely welcoming. We all had a great time down there back when I went in 2010 when we played Miami. And so to see the setting there that's been so great, getting to hear Brad and Gary on the call was a ton of fun for that. The stadium's packed and sold out in minutes basically for that matchup, which is cool to see in this day and age where we talk all the time about the different relationships people have with bowl games now and how teams view bowl games. To see that, all right, Notre Dame showed up, took care of business, there was a great crowd on hand, and overall it seemed like everyone had a great experience.
On Gojo and Golic, you and your dad were talking about the different ways to try to fix the bowl season. I know that it was brought up, maybe we play it at the beginning of the season. Can you kind of elaborate on that, like your thoughts on how we could fix the bowl games, stop, so many people from not even participating in the bowl games?
Yeah, so Anish Shroff, my old play-by-play partner at ESPN, who does a great job with the Panthers too, came on and threw that out there. And I'd heard Mike Ryan over at the Levitard show say that too. Basically, I think there's a precedent for that in some, like European soccer and some other sports formats where, yeah, it would be whatever your reward would be bowl game wise. They shift that to the beginning of the season next year, and it serves as a means to generate natural out of conference matchups, since so much of that is something that we covet in this day and age, but really in any day and age in college football. I wonder how realistic something that drastic would be, given the money that's tied up in these things and given just how long-standing the cadence is between the bowl games and everyone involved with that and making this happen. I think a more realistic approach could be dissolving some of the traditional conference affiliations with bowl games, where you've got each conference that has their certain tie-ins to bowl games and their specific mandates. And we saw, for Notre Dame, I think their names were getting picked out of a hat by the ACC at the end of this. Like, dissolve some of those, allow the people putting these games together to, look more specifically at the makeup of teams that would actually come out and be fielding competitive rosters, who would be incentivized to want to show up to this game. What are the best matchups that we could get out of teams within certain tiers if all of a sudden you broke some of those conference restrictions, since we're seeing anyway the traditional conference format with the dissolving of the Pac-12 and at least the form that we knew it, and who knows what will happen with the ACC and others. I think this is an opportunity where that could be something that's a little bit more realistic.
So one of the things that I did just a couple of weeks ago, and I feel like I saved, Stu Goss saved baseball with the trampolines and the outfield and all that. I saved college football with a 25 team, the top 25 NCAA tournament style tournament. And what that does to me is, like, you can have the Sun Bowl, like the potential matchup in the Sun Bowl would have been Michigan as they get a bye, and then they go up against the winner of Notre Dame and Iowa. And I have it all right here where they play in like all the different bowls and they kind of build up going to the national championship. And what that did is it still saved us 40 other or 20 other bowl games, because as you know, there are way too many damn bowl games now. So I feel like if we have an NCAA style tournament where you've got 25 teams that, have a legit shot of making it to the final, they'll have their players playing in it. And it kind of, it kind of brings a little more excitement to it.
If you can convince the television partners to give up some of the money that comes from their regular season packages with teams, then be my guest on that. It would be a ton of fun to try and watch that play out. Obviously, we've seen, FCS football's done a much more robust tournament for a while now and made that work. There are some things you'd have to search around, but yeah, listen, we're at a point right now where I don't think there are any bad ideas, because as we've seen, change is the only constant in college football right now. So line it up and let's go.
All I know is they got to continue to add more teams to the playoff, and that makes me happy. And you can give me that look all you want, Tip, but I think it's a phenomenal idea. I'm excited about it. Let's talk about the national championship game. Are you happy with this matchup, and how do you have Washington and Michigan going on Monday night in Houston?
At this point, I'm leaning Washington. I think I tend to prorate offense, and Michigan deserves a ton of respect. That's an incredibly complete football team. It's an incredibly well-coached football team. I think that was sort of the story for everybody coming off the Rose Bowl this past weekend was, in the first half, what Sharon Moore was able to do with that offense, carving up a Nick Saban-coached Alabama defense, defensively 5 sacks in the first half. Jesse Minter's group throwing a lot of NFL-style stuff. There's a lot of connective tissue between, what the Baltimore Ravens do personnel-wise, what Michigan does there defensively. And so I'm incredibly excited for the matchup overall, to answer the first question, especially, I wonder how Washington's defense is going to go about defending Michigan, that's probably willing to be a little bit more stubborn with the run game than Texas was. Texas had a ton of success on the ground, but, Sark wants to go bombs away. Sark likes a lot of big play action shots. He wants to push the ball down the field with those receivers. Michigan will we saw, in, Penn State, Ohio State, they'll turn it into ground and pound. They'll hand the ball off 20 times in a row if they need to win the game. So I'm excited to see what Washington does to combat that. They found a way to make plays all year, but to me, the Washington offense against the Michigan defense is college football's version of the 49ers offense against the Ravens defense that we got a few weeks ago. It's elite talent across the field, NFL guys everywhere, and I think two of the most innovative schemes in college football on either side of the ball.
So whenever we look at this matchup and we look at the people, the quarterbacks in this matchup, how is it that Michael Penix Jr. is still not looked at as the number one overall draft pick, that he's behind someone like Caleb Williams, when this guy looks like he's basically left-handed Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, you know what? I think as someone who I get to watch a lot of Michael Penix during the year, I got to cover Washington twice, the first game against Oregon, the Apple Cup game. In my mind, there is still a distance between him and those guys, quite frankly. Like what Drake May and Caleb Williams are able to do on a play-in, play-out basis, the way they get their teammates out of trouble consistently. Because Michael Penix Jr., while a lot of what he did in that game has been stuff that's been there all year, I've not seen him do that well under pressure consistently all year long. Like, when you've gotten him off the spot in the past, that's all of a sudden where the balls can sail a little bit and some of that off-target stuff comes. There is great play calling on that offense, which is obviously a factor. And listen, Caleb Williams was getting that too. Drake May, maybe not quite as much. So I think talent-wise, the injury history is going to be part of it with him, but he definitely made himself some money. Like, he was a guy that most of the people I trust in evaluating the draft had him as more of a day 2 guy, maybe even a day 3 guy, depending on, how you saw things. And now, I've talked to Nate Tice from The Athletic, who says that guy looks like QB4 right now, where we'll have the conversation, I'm sure, with him and Jaden Daniels out of LSU for who ends up being that third guy off the board. But we know how the NFL is so thirsty to make quarterback work. Probably going to push him up into the back end or maybe even the middle of the first round now. So he's done a lot for himself. I still do think there are things those other guys do better. I mean, those are the alien Mahomes guys. Like, we've been doing that comparison with Caleb Williams for a while now, but Michael Penix Jr. is a stellar college football player, and I'm glad more people are getting to see that on the stage.
Real quick, I'm going back to the NFL. Who was your Super Bowl picks for this year?
The Dallas Cowboys and who?
And yeah, the Cowboys and who else?
Yeah, I had the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs. So, I feel good about one of those picks. And Kansas City, it has been a roller coaster for so much of this season. And I still look now as we get towards the playoffs, where Baltimore's the clear upper crust of the AFC right now. They've managed to avoid the injury bug that's usually hampered them down the backstretch of the seasons. Todd Monken has come in and done with the passing attack everything that we hoped for. Lamar Jackson's probably going to win the MVP. It's all been gravy there. But once you get past them, we talked about it a little bit before. Buffalo coming in on a hot streak, incredibly talented team, all the strengths that we know there. Miami limping in a little bit more. And then you keep going down. We talked about the Cleveland Browns, and then you get to Kansas City, who the defense maybe isn't like the top 5 unit we saw in the first half of the season, but it's still pretty darn good. And you got some game breakers over there that can make things happen. And Patrick Mahomes still lives on the other side. They're going to be incredibly matchup based because of how flimsy they've been on tackle for a lot of this season. So if you're going up against a team that's got dominant outside rushers, we've seen it makes Mahomes very uncomfortable. And now all of a sudden this year, he's got fewer places he trusts to immediately go with that. But it's still hard for me because of all of the built up time under task we've got watching Pat make big plays in the postseason to say that they don't have a shot to still play in the AFC title game and maybe beyond.
My guy, Mike Golic Jr., thank you so much for joining us here on Fire and Ice. We appreciate your time. Remember, you can check him out Monday through Fridays, 8 o'clock Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Gojo and Golic, a phenomenal show, one of my favorite podcasts to listen to as well. Thank you so much. I know you said a couple of days ago, and I'm going to let you go on this. A couple of days ago on Pablo Torre, you said that it was interesting finding out like how many of your friends from college now are attracted to your dad. I just want to let you know this, like your dad is goals for me. Like one day I want to be zaddy like him.
You know what? You're not the first person to tell me that. It is, you know what? He's goals for me right now, which is good. We've got something to shoot for here. Unfortunately, I have to do a show next to him every day, so the comparison is definitely the thief of joy on a lot of days. So I appreciate you reminding me of that.
I love him too, just to let you know, but you poor fella, you.
I know. I say, you know what? God gives his toughest battles to me, his strongest soldier. Somehow I'll survive.
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate
Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you. All right, Brandon, that was a fun time with our guy, Mike Golic Jr. I know you're going to get going right now as well, so thank you on that. Just real quick before I let you go, Brandon, I want to get your thoughts on Victor Wembanyama. Earlier this year, I said that I was worried about him, because he looks just so frail. He looks so thin. And then we see the game that he put up this week against the Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo. What are your thoughts on what we saw from Victor Wembanyama this week?
Absolutely tremendous. And look, I mean, again, if you have the God-given talent, then the rest should be easy for you. And, this being year one, all he needs to do is, again, continue to work on his stature, his form, keep, get in the weight room. But other than that, he's the real McCoy. And I must say that, you being a Spurs fan, you have to be on cloud nine. And especially what, Popovich has been able to do with talent like this in the past. And this is the type of guy that you can build a championship team around. You know it as well as I do. I figure by next year, they'll be contending again. And I mean, no matter who the coach is there, when you got a guy like him, the sky is a limit. So very, very impressive against the Greek Freak. And I mean, what can you say? The kid has unbelievable talent. He really does. I'm as impressed as anyone is.
Brandon, thank you so much. I know you got your vacation going on for you right now, so I'm going to let you go ahead and get back to that. I appreciate you joining us here on our show, Fire and Ice. And what a great interview that was. We got to talk to our guy, Mike Golic Jr.
Loved it. Was looking forward to it. And everybody stay warm in El Paso here. It's like in the 30s. We got snow, and I'm getting out of Dodge tomorrow, man. There's a foot of snow coming on Tuesday. So we'll see you next Saturday, pal. Thanks.
I feel like this was the perfect time to bring back the bench. You're now going back on the bench for giving us a weather report out of the city of Chicago. Thank you so much for that, Brandon. But we'll see you later whenever you come back here to El Paso. Again, we're over here at Union Draft House, 730 Sunland Park Drive, in the parking lot of the Shops at Solana. Look at me remembering what it's called. I feel like a professional now. I got my guy, Andrew J. Polk, hanging out with us. We've got David hanging out with us as well. We've got to have a lot of the new specials that they have going on today as well. It's $4 ciders, seltzers, and Ornitos to go along with a pound of wings for $16. And then, Andrew, David.
Yes.
Every 5 wings after that, they just add them on for free. 5 wings each round until you're done. That sounds like a fat guy's heaven. Bottomless wings.
Oh, my.
Can you handle that, though? Because, it seems like an insurmountable task for me. I'm asking you, Dave, are you going to be able to handle that?
Not really.
Not really. Well, you know what? Hey, it is what it is. Once again, I want to give my thanks to my guy, Mike Golic Jr. for joining me as well. I am going to release my 25-team bracket. I'm telling you, whenever he was talking about money for college football, this is money, man. All these bowl games would actually be relevant, most of them. I think the Isleta, New Mexico Bowl was on the outside looking in whenever it came down to, bowl games being relevant. I think we somehow did get the Gaspar Motors Bougainvillea Bowl in here as well. So, that's fun to see a bowl with that much legacy behind it, along with the Duke's Mayo Bowl being a part of this as well. So, I'm interested to see how that goes in the future with the college football playoff, with it expanding. I'd like to see if you're going to expand it and bring all that chaos, let's bring we dive head first into all the chaos and make all 25 teams, because we know eventually there's going to be number 13 and someone's going to complain about 13 not getting a chance. And even at 25, we know someone's going to complain about 26 not getting a chance. So for me, why not just embrace it and try to give as many different teams an opportunity as you can? To me, again, the chaos, but it sounds like so much fun.
Well, that's part of what we get to talk about.
Yeah, there you go. So part of the stuff that we get to talk about. I did want to talk a little bit, once again, though, to highlight the stuff that we have going on this sports weekend. Right now, in just a couple of minutes, we are going to have the kickoff between the Texans and the Indianapolis Colts. Whoever wins that game gets into the playoffs. Plain and simple, just like that. But it depends on what happens in some of the other games, whether or not these teams are going to have a specific seed, right? So Jacksonville right now is the number 1 team in the AFC South. All 3 of these teams, the Texans, the Colts, and the Jaguars, have an identical record at 9-7. If the Jaguars win, they win the division. If they lose and Houston wins the division. If the Jaguars lose and the Colts win the division. The Jaguars go down to whatever seed it is. If there's a tie in all 3 games, and this is the chaos I'm rooting for because we haven't had a tie all year long, and Andrew can tell you I'm one of the few people in sports media that will call for ties. If they get a tie in both these games, we don't have a winner of the division.
Then what happens?
They would have to play another game, and I don't know how they would do it. I don't know what how they would define who does what and any of that stuff. I think they would have to get down, like if they don't want to play that game, they'd have to get down to tiebreakers that are just way down the list and obscure. It might wind up going to a coin toss.
They may have to go to the El Paso Chihuahuas to find out how they make up rain games when there's no room on the schedule to begin for those.
We'll have a doubleheader of NFL action.
There you go.
Who gets the bye game? Or do we like get a triple way field? We get the field to look like a T, and whoever scores on those ones, the chaos is just brewing here, and I am all about it. Another game that we're looking at on the schedule as well that has a lot of playoff implications between the Falcons and the Saints, and then of course Tampa Bay versus the Carolina Panthers. Tampa Bay can end all the discussions if Tampa Bay just wins. That's all they need to do. Just win. You win that division, that horrible NFC South. Maybe that's what it is, right? The AFC South is terrible. The NFC South is terrible. No one really wants to win these divisions. Maybe they should just be kicked out and we give the Dallas Cowboys a bye week. Or maybe I'm just being biased on my team. But if Tampa Bay beats Carolina, which they should, they win the division, they get in the playoffs, and it doesn't matter what happens between Atlanta and New Orleans. But New Orleans and Atlanta are playing before Tampa Bay plays. And one of those teams will either A, win the division if Tampa Bay loses, or B, be right the first team right outside of the playoffs. And you talk about, again, we've spoken about 3 games right now, I guess 4 games right now, and each one of them has playoff implications where there are going to be multiple teams on the outside looking in. You could not have asked for a better schedule matchup for the NFL because all these games are relevant. I think the only one that isn't relevant really would be the Browns and whoever the hell they're playing, which I think is Cincinnati, because the Browns are locked in at their playoff spot. Cincinnati doesn't have a playoff spot. And then the same thing with the 49ers and with the Rams. The 49ers are locked in at number 1. The Rams are locked in at number 6. What do they have to play for? The rest of the games on the schedule all have meaning to them. Your Pittsburgh or your Philadelphia Eagles.
Hopefully they'll work through their exhaustion.
Yeah, that is like they don't just look tired on the field; they look tired of each other.
Even the fans noticed it. What the bleep is going on?
Whenever they zoomed in on that poor lady's face and she's screaming, "What the hell are we doing? And what the hell is going on?" It seems like they just had the camera on her specifically just to make memes out of her because now she's a gif for the remainder of her life because that's all she's going to be known for now is the crazy Philadelphia Eagles fan that kept thinking about what the hell is this team doing. But I kind of understand her sentiment. I cannot stand the Philadelphia Eagles. And I look at this team and I think to myself, you've had multiple opportunities to put the nail in the coffin of the Dallas Cowboys. Make the Dallas Cowboys, who don't win on the road, go on the road and have to, win in the playoffs. And you weren't able to pull the trigger on it. You weren't able to knock that nail into the coffin. You just sat back and allowed teams like Arizona to beat you and lost games that you should have won to begin with. And now it's like the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a team that, again, 5 weeks ago, they were 11-1, 10-1. They were the best team in the NFL. Everyone was talking about how they're so much better than San Francisco because San Francisco came off that 3-game win streak. They were so much better than Baltimore because Baltimore had also lost a couple of games early on in the season. Philadelphia was looked at as the best team in the NFL, and now a month and a half later, we're wondering what the hell this team even is.
Yeah, because during their first half, they were playing, on par for their league. But then second half, you could see where they were running out of steam, both offense and defense.
And that's the thing. It seems like they have so many weapons on offense, but they don't know how to use them, right?
Right.
And then on defense, they have so many holes on defense that the only thing that's really good for them is a defensive line. But then the linebacking core and the secondary is just terrible. And that's what people are exploiting with them and just moving the ball up and down the field on this team. Philadelphia does so much better whenever they have a lead, and they can just lean on the tush push and the running game that they have to make sure that other teams don't score. But if you have the ball last against Philadelphia, I think you are happy with your chances of thinking you can win that game because you can move the ball up and down on the field on this team. Just like we saw the Arizona Cardinals, who went into that game with 3 wins on the season. They tanked this whole season away. They go into Philadelphia. This wasn't in Arizona. They went into Philadelphia and then slapped around the Eagles. The Eagles scored 2 defensive touchdowns. If not for Arizona giving them the ball, this game would have been ugly. It would have been a horrific game for Eagles fans to watch, and it would have been even worse because it would have been so one-sided. Like it was such an ugly game for that team. But nonetheless, the Eagles are going to limp into the playoffs. They have their playoff seed locked up. It all depends on what happens. And again, the Detroit Lions, and this is why the Dallas Cowboys have to play, right? They have to play tomorrow against the Washington Commanders. Is if they lose, And if Philadelphia loses and the Detroit Lions win, then Detroit leapfrogs Dallas into the 2nd seed. Dallas gets the 3rd seed. Yeah, they get a home game, but they don't get as much of a chance to continue having home games moving forward in the playoffs, right? So Detroit now on the road against Minnesota. Minnesota has to win this game to get into the playoffs. Detroit wants to win this game to potentially move up to the 2 seed, get additional playoff games at home. And I'm looking at the Detroit Lions. I'm thinking to myself, this is a team that last year I thought, and I told a lot of people, I told our friend Sal Montes as well, that this is a team that is super exciting. I love watching the Detroit Lions when they're not playing the Dallas Cowboys, because that was a nightmare of a game. Our friend Sarah Polk was super excited about that game, I'm sure, until the end, until 26 seconds left. She was excited about that game. Then it got a little difficult. I'm sure there were expletives being yelled out all throughout the house as that 2-point conversion happened and then got called back. There were happy expletives and then just nightmarish ones, I'm sure. The look on Andrew's face is just like, yeah, you don't want to know what she was saying. She was wishing death upon me and my friends. But Detroit has to win this game if they want to try to move up. Minnesota needs to win this game to get in. But along with Minnesota winning this game to get in, they need the Packers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and either the Saints or the Falcons to lose. They need all 3 of those things to happen in order for Minnesota to get into the playoffs. Then you've got Green Bay, who just now, this year, finally moving on from Aaron Rodgers. We're looking at a quarterback in Jordan Love that people are saying he's not that good, and then all of a sudden he's come on. He's learning the offense. He's finally got a healthy Aaron Jones back. He's got healthy receivers with him, and he's showing that this is a team that could do some damage in the playoffs. The Green Bay Packers now at home against the Chicago Bears, and the Bears are a team that already has the number 1 pick locked in, and they have the number 10 pick locked in, and potentially because of a trade that they made earlier about 2 years ago, could have the number 15 pick locked in the draft. If I'm the Bears, I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to win for. Do you just sit down and allow the Green Bay Packers to win this game? And Andrew, you're the Packers fan here. So what are your thoughts on this? And if you want to get over here on the mic, I know you're over there monitoring whatever it is you're monitoring. But if you want to let us know your thoughts as a Packers fan, what it is that you think is going to happen here, because it does seem like a nightmarish situation. You just got away from Aaron Rodgers and being held under the thumb of this guy because he is a sociopath and a psychopath. And we can talk more about him and the stuff he said about Jimmy Kimmel and
there are many paths.
What seems to be a nightmare that he has caused here. But what are your thoughts?
I think that the Bears are definitely not just going to roll over and do it. At that point, it's not about winning; it's about making the other guy lose. So
playing spoiler.
Yeah, playing spoiler at the very least, because if there's no path to victory, at the very least, take someone down with you. Sinking ship loves friends, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Why do you think I keep adding more people to this show?
Exactly.
Sinking ship. It's a joke. It's a joke. It's not really that sinking. We're just taking on a little bit of water.
Get your buckets.
But whenever I look at this team, are you excited about Jordan Love? Like, because we haven't really been able to talk too much about football or anything like that we've got coming up. We've got some other things that we've been talking about, but we haven't been able to talk about it. You wanted to get rid of Aaron Rodgers years ago.
Well, whenever the crazy started seeping out, apparently he had it pretty well on lockdown, though. Looking back, now that I think about it, the crazy was seeping out long before this. The whole story that came out years ago about him, like, completely disowning the rest of his family.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's been coming out, and then that tattoo just kind of was okay, so we're putting it on a billboard now. So so I'm not saying I love the new QB, who you just said his name, and I couldn't even tell you it again right now, but it's kind of at least it's not that.
Yeah, at least it's not a psychopath.
Yeah.
That's
the consolation, I think, at the moment.
That sounds like a winning proposition. At least it's not Aaron Rodgers.
Could be worse.
Yeah, it could be. You know what? It really could be. You could have him back again.
Don't have to worry about peyote being snorted up. Where do you do peyote? I don't know.
Ayahuasca.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, ayahuasca, all the hallucinogens. I had spoken to one of our friends about that, like a friend that we share mutually. I'm not going to say their name on the show right now, but they were like, yeah, man, like maybe we should go try it. And I was like, you know what? With all the things I'm willing to try, I don't think that's one of them.
Yeah, before this.
What happened to Aaron Rodgers.
Definitely hell no now.
Okay, so those are some of the matchups that we have going on. Once again, to recap all the games that have playoff implications. The Colts and the Texans, the Falcons and the Saints, the Steelers and Baltimore. Baltimore has nothing to play for, so the Steelers probably get the win here. And the thing is if the Steelers win and Buffalo loses, Buffalo is out of the playoffs completely. So you have a chance, once again, this is your nightmare scenario for Buffalo. You can be the number 2 seed, or you can be completely out of the playoffs. You can be the second best team in the AFC to being completely out of the playoffs because you're going to have multiple teams in the playoffs as wild cards at 10-7, which is just an insane thing to think about.
I gotta wonder in how many back offices there were these surreptitious Google searches of how to switch divisions.
I mean, there had to have been. Like I feel so bad, especially for Buffalo, because they had so many injuries that they needed to overcome in the beginning of the season. I mean, once again, they have the specter of last year they had a player die on the field at their home field. And this guy's, even though he came back, he's got half a tackle on the season, which is just amazing that he's even on a team. He's not going to win the comeback player of the year because we have someone named Joe Flacco who came off as Gojo was talking about, came off the couch and was like, let me just be out here slinging a football around and carry the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs. Yeah. Carried the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs. I'm going to say that again.
Yeah, that takes repeating.
The carcass of the Cleveland Browns was carried to the playoffs by Joe Flacco, who was retired earlier this year. That's an insane thing to think about. And that's going to win comeback player of the year over a guy that died on the field.
I mean, success butters a lot of biscuits. Let's put it that way.
Another one of the games that we have playoff implications: the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans, an absolute disappointment this year. Mike Vrabel and them boys not living up to their expectations. The Minnesota Vikings taking on the Detroit Lions. The Bears and the Packers, the Cowboys versus the Commanders. Once again, the Cowboys need to win this game in order to lock up the number 2 seed. If they don't, then their fate is in everyone else's hands. And then we see what happens here. There's still the possibility of if Dallas loses and Philadelphia wins, they flip-flop. Dallas goes to being number 5. Philadelphia goes up to being number 2. So Dallas needs to win this game to hold on to that spot. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Carolina Panthers. Once again, Tampa Bay, they win, they get in. The Eagles and the Giants, the Eagles just need to stop the bleeding right now. And a win against a team like the Giants, which is a team that they beat a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, it wasn't very impressive beating Tommy DeVito, but they got rid of Tommy DeVito and his agent, so they were able to do that. So maybe they come out here and they slap them around, but we'll see what happens. The Seahawks at the Cardinals. This has playoff implications depending on what happens with all the other teams. So if Green Bay wins, then this game doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
But if Green Bay loses, then this game matters again. So now it's coming down to all the different scenarios. The last I checked, there were 37 different scenarios that can happen.
Oh boy!
For a grand total of like 8 teams, which is just insane to think about. And then the Bills versus the Dolphins. Once again, I believe that's going to be the game of the week because this is where you find out who's going to win that division. For one, the Dolphins, with all the expectations that they had being the most explosive offense, they've kind of come back down to earth. They struggle against pretty solid defenses. The Buffalo Bills have a really solid defense, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and Josh Allen, who is making a push at being the MVP. So I'm interested to see those games as well, and I'm really excited to kind of see how everything plays out. And of course, on Monday, I mean, once again, it's just like an overload, man. Like in the veins of football, because we're gonna have the 2 football games about to kick off right now. It looks like it's raining in Baltimore. Oh yeah,
yep,
yeah, it's raining nasty in Baltimore.
John Harbaugh does not look happy.
Weather. There should be a point where like Baltimore looks at this and like, look, it doesn't affect us at all. We've got the number 1 seed locked up. Like maybe we just give this game to Pittsburgh.
Let's just send it to JV. Figure it out.
Well, that's what they're doing. So they're not starting Lamar Jackson. They've got Huntley starting the game for them as well. And this is the thing, right? Like if I'm Baltimore, I'm just like, you know what, we forfeit. I don't want to play this game. Don't risk injury to anybody. Let's forfeit. We've got enough depth. We've got all that.
Can we bring up the flags? Can we do a flag football this one?
And then that would really put the pressure on the Buffalo Bills for tomorrow night's game. Because if once again, Pittsburgh wins and Buffalo loses, Buffalo's out.
Just turn the game into a movie night. You got all the tickets sold. Just put up a screen. Just have it be that way. So saw people coming out. Get a local band on stage.
A local band? Not even like a.
Well, short notice.
No, okay. Well, yeah, you're right. Okay, so yeah, we got the local bands coming out over here for Andrew J. Polk. What would be like your local band?
Yeah, like Baltimore, I got no idea.
No, I'm talking about like here. Like if there was a local band you could choose.
Honestly, I haven't been to a concert in several years, so I am not the right person to ask about that.
Surprisingly, that doesn't shock me. Not at all. But hey, you know what? It is what it is. Okay, so one of the things that I did last year is I did like my NFL picks. And I figured I was doing that separate of the show. I wanted to bring that into the show. So we are going to go ahead and get our tip 6 going on right now. I'm waiting for the music to load. So now I'm filibustering as the music is loading because it is just giving me the blue wheel spinning right now. Not on the there it is. It is time now. for the tip six. It took a little while to get that down. That was a little louder than I thought it was going to be. But there it is. It's time now for our tip six. I'm going to give you 6 games that I have my eyes on. We're going to give you some of the betting lines. These betting lines brought to you by Bovada.lv. Go ahead and check them out. They've got amazing rates and all that stuff for you. If you're into crypto, they've got that for you as well. So some of the games that I've got right here. The Colts are a 2-point dog to the Houston Texans. I look at this game and I think about quarterbacks. I'm going with C.J. Stroud, the rookie quarterback who was on an MVP/Rookie of the Year pace before getting injured about 3.5 weeks ago with the concussion. I still believe he's going to be the Rookie of the Year, but Lamar Jackson has ran away with the MVP vote for a lot of people as well. Then the game that kind of scares me because I do not take spreads this big, but it's the biggest spread of the week. And I know that the Commies are an absolute garbage dump heap of a team. I'm going with the Dallas Cowboys to cover that 13-point spread as well. Then we've got Tampa Bay. They should win this game because Carolina has been absolute dog shit all year long, a shit sandwich that is completely soggy. They are a horrible, horrible team, are the Carolina Panthers. I feel bad for their fans. There was a game earlier this year where their tickets on the 50-yard line right at the beginning of the stadium were selling for $4. Oof. You could have gone to an NFL game and sat at the 50-yard line in the first row for $4 if you lived in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Beer's still 20.
And nobody went. Absolutely nobody went. There were hundreds of people, dozens of people maybe, at that game. Tampa Bay, a 4-point favorite there. I'm rolling with Baker Mayfield and them boys. The Kansas City Chiefs, a 3.5-point dog to the L.A. Chargers. The reason for this is Kansas City has nothing to play for, so they've got their backups in there. However, Easton Stick, the quarterback now for the L.A. Chargers, not someone I've got a lot of faith in. I am not riding with Easton Stick. Also, the name, it just sounds like he should be in another career field in the adult industry. So Easton Stick, I'm not riding with him. Kansas City, I think, is going to pull off the upset. 3.5 points, and they're going to get the win outright. Then you got the Jets, a 1.5-point dog against the New England Patriots. This is going to be, at the end of the day, Bill Belichick's last game with the New England Patriots. 24 years, finally coming to an end. It more than likely should. I probably shouldn't put the cart ahead of the horse, but it really should be the last game for Bill Belichick with the New England Patriots. He has won his last 15 games against the New York Jets. And I feel like the Jets are going to want to send him out sad. I feel like the Jets are going to get this win. They are a 1.5-point dog. I am rolling with the Jets, and I know I shouldn't, but I'm going to anyway. That might be where I lose everything. And then the national championship game happening this Monday. You have the Michigan Wolverines taking on the Washington State Huskies. Washington has done absolutely amazing this year. They've been phenomenal. Michael Penix Jr., once again, I made the analogy earlier today, left-handed Patrick Mahomes. The guy can make all the different throws. He's a phenomenal quarterback, but that Michigan defense. And the fact that I would love to see something that we've never seen before happen in real time before us. Jim Harbaugh missed a total of 7 games coaching this season due to various suspensions that have cheating allegations with them. So what I want to happen, and it's selfishly for me, is for Michigan to cover the 4.5-point spread, win the national championship, and then starting on Tuesday, the talk happens of vacating the title. Because once again, 2 different suspensions where you were suspended for 7 games, and then you win the national championship. And those suspensions were for cheating allegations. I am all about it. I don't think that Washington is going to have a chance. Our guy, Jaime, saying, go Huskies. I get it. A lot of people want it to happen. I'm just rooting for the chaos. I want the vacated title because I know it's going to happen the next day. As soon as it happens, it might even be minutes after Michigan wins the title. The talk is going to be out there. It's time to give up that championship.
They're going to be out there just vacuuming up all the confetti.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic. And, of course, the only reason why I'm all on this Michigan bandwagon is they brought us the greatest name in sports, Connor Stallion.
That is pretty good.
That is a phenomenal name, especially if he's the guy that's doing all the cheating for you. Connor Stallion, expert cheater for the Michigan Wolverines. So those are the tip 6 of the weekend. I have the Texans 2 points over the Colts. The Cowboys covering 13 points over the Commies. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers 4-point spread over the Carolina Panthers. The Kansas City Chiefs with the upset over the LA Chargers. The Jets upsetting the Panthers, or the Patriots rather. And then the Michigan Wolverines winning the national championship over the Washington Huskies. Thank you all so much for tuning into today's show. I want to give a thank you to my friend Mike Golic Jr. for being on the show as well. And we will see you all next week. Maybe Brandon will be here. Maybe he won't. Maybe we'll just have Brandon replaced with a bunch of other people too.